In this video, we're going to learn a little bit about a software called Geometer Sketchpad. So the first thing would be to open your GSP5 icon. Looks like this, or you could search for it on your computer. So GSP5 is what we're going to be working in, and then just click on a white space. So let's look on the left here. The arrow tool is your default tool. You'll always kind of want to go back to that. If I want to type something, click on the text tool. So let's go down and select A. And double click on your screen, and why don't you go ahead and type your name in. Then on the bottom, notice that you can change this to any color that you want. You can change the font. So make sure that your name is on the first page of your document somewhere. Then the next tool below the arrow tool is the point tool. So go ahead and grab the point tool. This allows you to place points on the screen. So let's just have one point. If I want to undo, just go ahead to edit, undo, construct point. So if I have one point, and then if I go back to the text tool, notice how if I hover over this point, that hand changes colors. If I click on it once, it'll label the point. So this is now point A. Let's say I don't want this to be point A. If you double click on the point, you can change the label. So why don't you change the point to be the first letter of your name? Okay, so now I have my point. I can move that label around if I want to. That is point M. Now if I want to draw a segment, I'm going to go down to this fourth tool here. Notice how if I hold on this icon, I can drag and change from a segment to a ray to a line. So I just want it to be on the segment tool. So if I draw, I actually have some endpoints. And then let's go ahead and name this segment. So that would make us go down to the text tool, click on those points. So now this is segment BC. Let's say I want this to be segment AB. Go back and double click. Let's make this segment AB. So double click, change those endpoints so yours looks just like this on your screen. Now I want to draw a ray. So you may know how to do that. Just go ahead to the segment tool, hold on the segment tool, drag over until the ray is highlighted. And click anywhere on the screen. And notice how the ray goes on forever. And let's label this ray, I don't know, let's go with XY. So click on your point tool again, or your text tool, excuse me. Click on each of the points. Double click to change. Let's call this ray XY. And certainly remember the order does matter here. If I want this to be ray XY, X should be the initial point, Y should be some other point on the ray. So now let's throw another tab in our document. So if you go to File, Document Options, then Add Page, we're going to go to Add Page, Blank Page. And let's go back and label. So page 1, let's label, I don't know, point, segment, ray. And page 2, I'm going to name vertical angles, linear pairs. So can you name your page the same way? Page 2, vertical angles, linear pairs. And go ahead and click OK. So now under that first tab, I have my drawing, and under the second tab, I can start fresh. So what I want you to do now is click on this segment or ray tool, drag over, and I want you to get a line. So make sure you are on the line tool where you see arrows on both sides. And click kind of in the upper left corner of your screen all the way down to the lower right. And lower left to upper right. And then let's adjust these so all of these angles in the center don't look like 90. So let's make a couple of acute angles, a couple of obtuse angles. Now what I want you to do is click on a white space. Make sure you're clicked on a white space. If you don't click on a white space, something's going to be highlighted and this might not work. So click on a white space, make sure nothing's highlighted in pink. Click on your 2 lines. So now all that should be highlighted is those lines. No points should be highlighted. And then I want you to go to Construct Intersection. If it didn't allow you to do that, you probably had too many things highlighted. So now, if I move these lines, notice that point in the middle stays. That is the point of intersection. So I want you to look here at these 4 angles. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And let's think about the relationship between these angles. If I want to measure the angles, I can do that by clicking on the points, but I need to click on them in order. So let's go ahead, well, let's label them first. So let's go A, B, C, D, and E. So label your points just like mine. If you clicked on them in the wrong order, again, you can double click and change the label. So we got A, B, C, D, E. Let's say I want to measure angle AED. Well, I need to go back up to the point tool, make sure nothing is highlighted, so click on a white space. And if I want to measure this angle, I need to click on it in the order in which I would name it. So I could name this AED or DEA. So I'm going to click on A, then the vertex second, then E, then D, and I'm going to go to measure angle. Go ahead and drag that angle measure in. Is this angle AED? Sure it is. If I click on them in the wrong order, if I did A, then D, then E, so A, then D, then E, then measure angle, I'm going to get a completely different angle. I would get the angle kind of that's not drawn here where D would be the vertex, and that's not what I want. I want E to be the vertex. Okay, so there's my angle. Notice how everything on this software is dynamic, meaning if I move the line, the angle changes as I move the line. So why don't you go ahead and drag just point D or drag point A around and notice how that angle changes. And I'm going to say let's make this an acute angle, so something less than 90 degrees, so I'm going to leave it right about there. Okay, now if I look at the other 3 angles on the screen, any guesses as to what the angle measures would be? So let's look over here, BEC, any guesses? Let's go ahead and measure, so click on these points in order. B, then E must be clicked second, that's the vertex, then C. We're going to go to measure angle again. These angles are the same measure, so maybe you guessed that. These would be called vertical angles. Again, if I move the line, the angle measures change, but notice how these 2 angles right here are always the same measure. They're called vertical angles. Now, how about these other 2 angles? Guesses as to what the measure of this angle should be. And on your screen, I mean, these might be different measures than mine, but they should be the same. So is there a connection now between these 2 angles and the 2 angles that we've measured? So let's measure the top angle, AEB. So click on those in order and go to measure angle. And I see that's 135.06 degrees on my screen. If I measure this bottom angle, so go ahead and measure the bottom angle, guesses should be the same measure. So I've noticed, okay, well these 2 are the same. Those are called vertical angles. These 2 are the same. So anytime I have these 2 lines that cross, that X, the opposite angles should be congruent. Is there any other relationship? Sure there is. What about these 2? So if I look at these 2 adjacent angles, they're adjacent because they share this side DE, and then their other sides make a straight line. Any relationship between these 2 angles? Well, if I go up to, let's go to number calculate. If you go to number calculate, you can actually end up doing some calculations on Sketchpad. I can throw in these angle measures. So click on one of your acute angles, and then let's do plus, and click on an adjacent obtuse angle. So either the top or bottom angle here. I'll click on the bottom one. What should these add to? Well, click OK. They should add to 180 degrees. So these 2 angles, because they make this straight line here, these 2 angles make a straight line, they should measure 180 degrees, or what's called supplementary. Are there other angles that measure to 180 degrees? Sure there are. There's actually 4 angles that measure to 180 degrees. So the last thing I want you to do here is let's go ahead and find 4 different pairs of angles that add to 180. So here's one. And remember where we went number calculate. Here's another pair, so there's a different pair that adds to 180, click OK. And then I want you to go ahead and find the last two pairs that add to 180 degrees. Okay, so once you have found all four that add to 180, I've only done two, you should have four on your screen. Go ahead and let's insert another tab, so that's under File again, Document Options, Add Page, Blank Page, and we're just going to call this Doodle. So let's just address some of these other tools here. There's a circle tool. If you click in the center and expand, you should be able to get a circle. So anywhere I click, if that circle tool is highlighted, I would get a circle. I want to also point out that you can click on the circle or any line or anything that you have and change the color of it. So if you go to display, if it's highlighted, I can change the color certainly. I could change the thickness of the line. So all of that stuff is under display. So why don't you throw a couple of circles on your screen, make them different colors, maybe make the lines different thicknesses. This is your polygon tool, so if you click and drag, you can make different polygons. When you want to stop, you double click on the last point. So I can make triangles or hexagons or anything like that, double click to stop. And here's just a pen tool where you can write things on the screen. So at this point, let's make sure you have 1, 2, 3 pages, which should look very similar to the ones on my screen. Make sure it's saved, and if your teacher wishes, please submit this document to your teacher.